A little bit louder. A little bit louder. Is that okay? We're going to ask people out in front, you know, all our candidates here. Is that okay? All right. Well, what a setting for a husting. How many hustings have you done outside on a riverbank? Not enough. Exactly. Not enough. We are super grateful, massively grateful to be here this evening with you all on the banks of the River Swale. It is absolutely, I've never been here before. And as we came down the hills earlier and looked across at the view and saw the waterfalls, I was absolutely blown away. To be honest, I thought there's something like the Jungle Book when you get down here and you're looking up the river. It's just stunning, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. And I think you're all very lucky to live here. But we're grateful, very grateful to be here. It's a funny trip for us. Come inland. For those of you who are here earlier, you might have seen us in the river in our wetsuits and with our surfboards. It's a bit incongruous, isn't it, really? But we come here, come inland, stand with you all. So we're from the coast, right? We're from Cornwall. We are Surfers Against Sewage. Been around for 34 years, campaigning for a cleaner ocean. But we come inland now, in this election time, because our rivers and our lakes are connected to the sea. What happens here, the sewage that comes out to the outfalls just up here, ultimately ends up going down the river and it goes into our sea. And it pollutes the places that we all love. I mean, I imagine you all have hugely strong feelings for this place. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. You live here for a reason. I'm sure you come down here for all sorts of reasons, to contemplate life, to see it, and just to be in nature. And it is stunning. You know, it's really, really lovely. So, yeah, we've come on a tour. We've come on a tour in our big blue bus. We've got Trevor up. We thought these candidates or the political party, they all got buses. And we said, you know what, we're going to get a bus. Admittedly, our bus is probably a little bit more crap than theirs. Ours goes at 45 miles an hour and no faster. And so far, we've gone from Cornwall, we've gone up to Windermere. We campaigned with, say, Windermere there. Then we went over to Edinburgh. And by the way, your weather that you've got here is so much nicer than Edinburgh. You're on Portobello Beach. It's always like this here. Is it always like this here? Yeah, it is. Yeah, sunny on the inside. But yeah, we were in Edinburgh. We did something similar on Portobello Beach. And it was windy. And then it started raining. And our 4 candidates that were the local candidates in Portobello Beach got drenched. And one of them was absolutely freezing. He was like, but they did well. And we had a crowd about this sort of size. And it stayed with us 90 minutes as we, I was going to say grilled, discussed issues of water quality with candidates. But I have to say, this is nicer, warmer, and it's just a fantastic setting. So thank you so much for joining us. So, the other reason why we come here in particular is because we've been working for the last couple of years with inland communities who are applying for failing water status. I can feel the wind. Is anyone on surfboard duty? Just in case they go to that. We love the surfboard. We keep falling over the wind. But yeah, so the last couple of years we've been working with communities across the country, inland, to apply for failing water status. Like the wind on the mentioned. What that really means is it's applying for a classification of a part of a river or a lake or a part of the coast where, because if it has bathing water status, it will be monitored. And that monitoring is about protection of public health, because people are, you can go in and swim and enjoy it. But that monitoring will also direct investment for the future. It will tell waterers where we need to put money to improve the quality of those waters. So that's where we met SOS. Save Australia. So, yeah, we deliberately wanted to come inland and spend time with SOS on this tour, in solidarity really, to say that our rivers and our lakes are under threat, and we are touring the communities around the country to stand with them and reclaim these places from the polluters. Because it's just not right that we are polluting these waters with a cocktail of awful substances, but that includes sewage in that cocktail. So the aims of our road trip are to stand with water-loving communities like SOS and reclaim these places. We want to make sure that in this election period, this issue of sewage in our waters is been discussed by the parties, is a priority for the communities, but it's been discussed in public and is in the media. So we want to elevate it and make sure it is an election issue. And we know it is an election issue because polling has told us it's an election issue. 56% of people recently polled told the pollsters that the way the government has been handling the sewage crisis will affect the way they vote. And 1 in 4 people have said that it is a priority issue for them in this election. Yet so far in this election we've heard very little about the sewage crisis. So Keir Starmer came out in the election, on the announcement of the election, said his first paragraph included discussion of sewage pollution. In when he came out and said, yes, we're ready to campaign on this because Rishi, you fired the gun, and he mentioned it. But since that point, apart from the diving off a board in Windermere, we've had very little about it. But it's ramping up. Over the course of this weekend, we're going to hear a lot more about it, and it is going to be discussed. So it's great that you're here and raising it as an issue in your... So we're demanding all sorts of things. We have an end sewage pollution manifesto. So this has simple demands in it, if you like, for the next government. There's 5 simple actions that they can take to end sewage pollution in UK waters. And tonight what we'll be discussing is this issue with these candidates. And mentally we're going to be, if you like, comparing them to our answers in the manifesto, thinking, are they going to be going faster? So this is your... Hello. This is your opportunity to quiz these candidates. We've got some questions prepared that we've asked them, and they are ready to speak to those. And then some of you have also provided questions, and that will be going through. But I will definitely I will open the floor to you all as well. So there will be an opportunity to ask all questions as well. The reason for that is, this is your place, right? This is your river, and it's your right to ask these guys, they are all guys, what they want to do, what they are going to do, sewage pollution in this river. And we, together with the communities around the country, want to end sewage pollution in rivers like this, and in lakes like this, the places that we swim and surf and high priority nature sites, by 2030 at the very latest. So that's the minimum bar we're seeking, and we're thinking about that before we meet. So, at this point, I'd like to introduce Deborah from SOS, who is here working on your behalf tirelessly with a team of people, a large team of people, but she's here all the time working on your behalf to clean up this river. So we're here to support her, but this is really your event. We just want to enable you in that. So Deborah, let's say some words out for the show.
Thank you, Charles. Just a huge thank you to everybody that's turned out today. We really appreciate it. And obviously a huge thank you to the 3 candidates that have taken time out of their electioneering, because I'm sure they are incredibly busy. So this is a real issue for us. The river is beautiful. It looks beautiful. This water provides so much to the environment and also people's kind of general health and well-being and enjoyment. And we are so lucky to have something so incredible on the doorstep of where we live. When I first moved here, I was blown away by the river. I came from Manchester, you might tell by my accent, and rightly or wrongly, living very near the Orwell, I expected the Orwell River to be very polluted because it's very urban and it's very industrial. It actually shouldn't be like that, to be honest, and no river in this country should be like that. So our key objective is to stop pollution for profit. And that's what's happening. It's what's been happening for 35 years for the water companies, and we need to end that now. So my ask of you is that when you ask the questions of the candidates today, is that you really are specific about what you want to know, because it's great that they're here and it's great that they're showing their support, but in reality what action is going to be taken, because the legislation to stop what's happening is already in place. It's just not being enforced, and we need that to happen. So I'm going to hand you back to Giles. I just, one quick thank you, because I know that I can see lots of our volunteers here. We have got over 40 volunteers. They're all brilliant, and they all give up all their own time to come and out, do water quality monitoring and lots of other things that we're involved in. If this is the first time that you've come across Save Our Swell, we've got a Facebook page, we've got an Instagram page and a Twitter account. and you want to get involved or you want to sign up for our newsletter, then just get in touch with us and we are more than happy to kind of give you information that we've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Good. So, we'll start our hustings. We've got a few ground rules though before we start. So, we'd like a thoughtful and respectful discussion from you guys, but from us too. So, there's no place for homophobia and racism and that kind of thing. We'll shut that down straight away, and you'll be chucked into the river. And we'll all get to do that. Thank you to do that. But yeah, we want a good discussion. We want to hear about it. So, I'm going to ask a question, and we'll go in turn through each of the candidates. We'll give them, because there's only 3 of you, we'll give you 4 minutes each to answer that question. And then, if you'd like to come back on a point, make it known, and we'll come back to you. And likewise, audience, at the end of a round of questions, I'll give you an opportunity to ask a supplementary question or follow on, but let's do it in a way that is respectful and thoughtful. That way, okay. Now, we have a candidate that was missing. Richard Sewage. We did invite actual candidates from the Form and the Works Party and the Conservatives too. Richie was busy, couldn't make it. We were waiting for the very last minute. We didn't have to turn up for the very last minute. We thought it'd be epic. We had to turn up for this. But he hasn't been able to. So instead, I'm going to borrow his chair. Alright. So we've got another microphone. Yeah. So, we've got 3 candidates tonight. We've got Dan Callaghan from the Lib Dem. We've got Tom Wilson from Labour, and Kevin Foster from the Green Party. And very simple format, as I said. I'm just going to ask the questions, then we'll go through them, and then we'll get your chance to. So the very first question is, how do you propose to tackle sewage pollution crisis at a national level and hold the water companies to account? So let's work our way down. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for coming to us on your tour. You're right, this is an absolutely outstanding, beautiful part of the world, and I feel so lucky to have grown up here. For me, this issue of sewage pollution is very personal because I grew up swimming in this patch of river right behind me, and quite frankly, I'm not sure if I'd do it again tonight, and not just because it's cold. This constituency is in the bottom 3% of all 650 constituencies in the entire country when it comes to the number of sewage dumps in our rivers in 2023. And that shouldn't be happening anywhere, like Deborah said, but we have 2 national parks in this constituency, so it's an absolute travesty, and it's all happened on the Conservatives' watch, and particularly on the watch of Rishi Sunak. The word conserve is in their name, and look what has happened here. He didn't even reply to an invitation from SOS to attend a meeting the other week, so absolutely outrageous. The Lib Dems have been leading the charge in Parliament on this issue, and my good friend Tim Farron particularly has been tabling motion after motion to try and get this stuff sorted in the Commons. He's one of the reasons why I'm in this, actually. I've seen the great work Tim can do for a constituency like ours. He's a strong local champion for his patch, and I want to do the same for this area here. But Tim's been leading that charge, and you'll see from our manifesto that we have one of the, well, I'd say the boldest offer on cleaning up rivers. And I think you said that you haven't really heard much from the main 2 parties on this, but I think the Lib Dems are being clear. This is one of our top priorities. And it is a central pledge of my campaign. If you've seen any of my literature, ending the sewage crisis here and across the country is central to that. So what would we do? We would set legally binding targets by introducing blue flag status for rivers right across the country. Rivers like this that have a special importance for people to come bathe and to come and use it in a leisurely way. We extend the blue flag status that we have for beaches to rivers, and I would set legally binding targets which must be met for water companies throughout the year. But that can't be done without properly enforced. So what we would do is we would get rid of Ofwat and we'd replace it with a tough new regulator called the Clean Water Authority. The Clean Water Authority would take many powers out of the Environment Agency, and they'd be funded up to £10 million to recruit new sewage busters who'd have the time and the energy to come and check that the water companies were kind of being held to these targets. I think that's really important. We really need a tough regulator that can do this work. We'd also we'd also put a 16%, additional 16% sewage tax on the profits of water companies, and that money would be channeled back into properly resourcing the Clean Water Authority. And finally, we would stop water company executive bonuses once and for all. These people can't be paid bonuses and allowed to get away with this, and it's time that we acted and stopped it. Thank you. Is mine work? Yeah.
Cool. I just want to say thank you very much, Daniel. Before we come to you, sorry, just one quick follow-on question though. What's your vision for water in the UK? In a sort of crisp statement, what would you like to see the water like?
My vision for waters like this one is to come back and not hear from a vet in Catching Village that they're getting dogs coming in to the vet's office, to the practice every week with vomiting and diarrhoea because they've been in the river. That's my vision, and my vision is for parents to feel comfortable at Brompton and Swale to let their kids go into the river and swim without worrying that they're going to get E. coli. I think that's my vision.
Thank you, Daniel. Over to you. So, same question. How would you propose to tackle sewage pollution crisis at a national level and hold the water companies to account?
Yeah, sure. Lovely. Hello, everyone. I'm the Labour candidate in Richmond Northallerton. Thanks for setting this up. It was a great pleasure to save our sail. Say it. Further down. Yeah, sorry. It's not. The joke there was going to be it's not a Hustings unless there's technical issues and it cut me off. So. Like that. Right, let's... No. I'll sort it on. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. So first, to understand what the actual problems are. First off, number one, water companies. There's not been a single year since privatisation that more money has been taken out by shareholders than put in. I think pretty much everyone here must be in agreement that privatisation has been a failure. And it's created a bit of a catch-22 because not only is it a failure, but those water companies are also absolutely overladen with debt. 60 billion. 28% of water bills that you pay go on servicing debt of water companies. That is just unsustainable. And I'm not going to try and be glib and give you a quick answer to that. It's going to be difficult. What Labour said is that we would run a comprehensive review into the entire system of the water and get to the root causes of what's actually happening in those companies, what needs to be done, how it can be funded. We're not going to try and mess you around with quick solutions or sound bites. That just needs to happen immediately. Number two, problem regulators. Because I think what we've seen over 15 years is a deep hollowing out of regulators across the board, not just in water, not just Ofwat, Environment Agency, massively hollowed out. Even since the pandemic, when the government set up the UK Health Security Agency, which I used to work for, one of the first things the government did after the end of the COVID pandemic was cut half of its staff, including me. That's how I ended up going to work for the NHS. These regulators don't have teeth, they don't have the will to actually regulate the companies that they're going after, and they need to. So, and apologies here, my printer spectacularly exploded this morning, so I'm reading notes off my phone. But Labour has said that we would immediately be putting water companies in special measures. So, water regulator with actual powers to block bonuses, no delay, no consultation, just do it. If bosses oversee law breaking, there should be criminal charges. Full stop. They should be in court and answering for it. The Post Office scandal, I think, is actually a very good example of a model in which very senior CEOs can be held to account. Let's bring it into the water system. Any self-monitoring. This is such a huge one. We've all heard horror stories in which water companies have put the water measuring devices in the river upstream from where the sewage gets dumped to try and reduce the amount of sewage that's picked up. The SOS meeting the other week in Richmond shed massive light on this. That needs to stop. Companies need to monitor every single water output for sewage, and all of that information needs to become public, transparent, open for anyone here to read so that they can be held to account. And finally, we hide behind far too many consultations and investigations in this country. Fines should be severe, they should be automatic whenever a water boss cannot answer for illegal dumping. You have to crack down on the practice from the start. This is, incidentally, in Labour's manifesto, just the start. This is our opening year to year two. What that will then be setting up is the environment of fear, hopefully, for CEOs of water companies, while we do the investigations into the whole system, and will come with a long-term practical plan, fully funded, hopefully, once this country starts growing again, that's actually funded. The lack of funding in the Environment Agency is the #1 cause of why sewage dumping gets ignored in rivers. So I'm not going to try and pretend there's any easy answers, but Labour is absolutely 100% committed to cracking down on water companies, making the changes we need to make, and making sure that our rivers are clean once and for all.
Thank you, Tom. Excellent. So far, we've both kept to their 4 minutes just about, so that's not bad. But Tom, same question to you though. What's your long-term vision for the health of our rivers in the sea?
Long-term vision, we should be able to trust, without question, that the rivers of our country are safe to swim in, safe to paddle in, safe for our dogs to go and jump in, without basically unpaid community activists. And God save us well, you guys do an incredible job, but it shouldn't be like down to civilians to clean our rivers. We should have structures in place that we know, whether it's raining a lot, whatever the state the water company is in, we should be able to know that we can go for a swim in our local river, without community like us needing to do the work for them.
Okay, so rivers fits for me. Wonderful. And to our last candidate today, so to you, how do you propose to tackle sewage pollution crisis and a national hold of water companies to account?
Okay, so I've heard a lot about regulation and fines and CEOs and bonuses. It doesn't work. We're still be talking about this in 10 years' time. The Green Party is going to take public ownership back of our waters and stop it from day one. We can't trust these people to do this. They'll get instructions in. All this will end up in court, out of court. It goes on. It's like an evolving circular door. So the answer's simple: is stop the water companies that are owned by foreign and companies from Britain, take into public ownership. We regulate them. We are going to put £1.5 million into the Environment Authority so they can do this. And I'm not going to talk any more about all this. Answer, it's very simple, very direct. The Green Party are going to take public ownership of our waters so we can look after them better. We don't trust the companies to do it. It's that simple.
The same question to you, what's your vision, your longer-term vision for the health of our rivers and seas?
Well, the longer-term vision is to see them companies coming back to public ownership and stop the nearly 1,800 dumps in our Richmond River here, and to stop it and get it oxygenated and working properly, and get rid of these companies, get them out of our system, and let's get it back to public ownership so we own them, we regulate them, and we get them working properly. So that's my vision.
Very much. Good. All right. So, we've got an opportunity. Would anyone like to make a point or come back from this lady in the green dress at the back?
Yes,
So
I
now,
would like to ask the Green candidate where he proposes to get this.
Can you get a microphone up to you very quickly?
I'm sure I can project my voice, thank you. I don't want a microphone, I can project my voice, thank you. I would like to ask the Green candidate where he the Green Party proposes to get the funds to take the water companies back into public ownership.
So where would the Green Party get the funds to take back the water companies?
If we're in government, we just kick them out. It's as simple as that. We can do this. We look at the contracts, we phase the contracts out, and we take them into ownership. They're failing on every single level. Are we really going to wait for 10 years to watch them keep failing? Because it's not going to change. You know what countries like, lawyers and all that. So don't make something, let's do something positive and quick and do it now.
Okay, and the lady in the black jacket. All right to shout? No?
Yeah, to shout. I'd just like to pick up on your point. I'm a member of a university, I work in a public service, I'm a senior lecturer. My pension is wrapped up in one of the water companies. So when you say we'll take it back into public ownership, it's not that simple.
Okay, so really good point about the complexity of this system, which is that for many of us, our pensions are wrapped up in the future of the water companies. So they are an investment, they're a legitimate investment for pensions. And so how might that work then with bringing that the renationalisation of the water companies? What does it mean for pensions?
Pensions is like everything else. It's a good point, really. But to tell you something about pensions, we need to stop investing in fossil fuels, and we need to stop investing in water companies. We invest in cleaner, greener energies. That's what we do. And we're coming through. So, I mean, we do it as fast as we possibly can. We get rid of them. We're really ambitious what we're doing. Don't be deflected what we can't do. Let's do what we can do.
Okay, and one more question here at the front before we move on to the next question. No, let's go changing the law. I think they're incompetent. We can take them to incompetence. They're failing every direction they're doing. They're absolutely awful what they're doing. Everybody knows they're failing, so let's get them out for failure to what they do. And we do it that way. So we look at the solicitors of this, they fail. They should be fined, they're not getting fined, so let's get rid of them. It might be difficult, but let's do something right. We can go circular, like I said, about talking about taking people off CAOs. It doesn't work. They just ignore what we do. So let's get rid of them, let's take back the ownership on waters. That's the answer. Okay, all good questions, and we will have more. I promise I'll come to you in a bit. But to move the discussion on, otherwise we could get stuck in one area and we don't want to stay in a rabbit hole. But to move the discussion on, our second question, and Tom, I'll come to you first. So the second question is, we're going to get local now, so we're going to think about here, we're going to think about this river. So Tom, I'd really like to know, if you were elected, if you were the MP for this ward, what would you do to end sewage pollution right here on this river?
Thanks for that. This is one of those really tricky questions because it's so wrapped up in national politics. One thing I would do is be present. It's not actually just the Swellens constituency, it's a very big constituency. I'm already up to go to the Save Our UA campaign, if that's what they're calling it, in next week. But what we should be doing as an MP is turning up, knocking on the door of Yorkshire Water as many times as it takes. You should be the biggest thorn in Yorkshire Water's side as it's possible to be until they actually stand up and listen. We've seen successful anti-sewage dumping campaigns, specifically in Ilkley. That talk was really cool last week. And it would be great if every local river could be saved through a local campaign like that. What we've now seen is that applications for things like swimming licenses and that kind of status campaigning is being shut down because the Environment Agency doesn't have the resources. So what I would be hoping to do after the next election as part of, let's hope, a new majority Labour government, is to use my influence on Keir Starmer, on the cabinet, make it clear that when we do start to see economic growth, and we have a plan for that, we may get into it, but when we do start seeing that, there will be a lot of wrangling over where that kind of money goes, what needs investment in. Everyone and their dog wants the money to go to their pet project because everything is breaking. So one of the first things I do is continue to work with Save Our Swale, continue to work with Save the UA, and make sure that our environmental agencies, those regulators, are actually properly funded. Start here if you need to, do trial runs in regions. I'll volunteer us to be the first, and to make sure that any instance of dumping, certainly any instance of illegal dumping in the swale by anybody, is public, called out, shamed, and on the front cover of every local paper. We need to create a movement behind this. And just because there's crises in the NHS, in our schools, in policing, this cannot go unaddressed. We do not have time for this to get worse. So I'd be present, I'd be campaigning, and I'd surround myself with the true experts, which is everyone here, and let them drive the conversation nationally.
Question, hyper-local, if you were in power here, what would you do to actually make a difference right here on the swale?
I'd follow through what the Green Party in North Yorkshire Council has already done. We've got to national government to tell them the water pump is not good enough. We want them to support cleaner water and support groups like SOS and yourselves. We need better water that needs to be sorted out. The North Yorkshire Council are, and with support as an MP, looking at all the water companies now and trying to hold them to account for the very first time. I think they're serious now. I really start believing that. We're making a big investment in Scarborough, and I think all the waters are linked. It's great that the baby companies like yourself are doing a great job, but that's the start of it, and we need to develop all the way through to go right from coast to coast to start this happening. So that's my thing. Let's get all the councils that are really starting to wake up to this and do it. And let's say dumping of sewage actually every month, the water company or whoever's in charge, if it's going to public water, to actually produce and tell us how many dumps are getting done bi-weekly, so they can go to scrutiny committees and actually have to explain it. I mean, nearly 1,800 dumps in this river in Richmond in 2023. How are they getting away with this? And we need to get it into the public. So we need to get them to publish what's going on for us to understand. If they were having to stand at scrutiny boards at Westminster, then the big company's going, well, why did you do it? And they can't just get away, oh, it rained a bit, so the first company went over. We've all seen some of the mess of our rivers, and I think we're getting there now, and it's thanks to people like Sewage and that we need to do, but we need to get them published more transparently, because there isn't. So that would be my pledge as the MP. Let's get these published so everybody knows about it, get it in the open, and make these companies transparent, and get the fines in there if we have to put it if the new government won't do it. So transparency is the answer, getting them to tell the truth. Everybody likes the truth, but want straight truth. How many dumps you doing per month? Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, so radical transparency data. Daniel, same question to you. So what will you do if you were elected to actually transform this river here as well?
If I was elected, I'd push for this to be given blue flag status. It's simple as that. Look at it, it deserves it. And that would cut out the middleman. I mean, like you said, the work that SOS do is laudable, but it's a crying shame that they have to do that. Giving rivers that kind of status already takes away the need for volunteers to monitor. You get monitoring, and you get legally binding targets that water companies have to abide by. But, unfortunately, very unlikely that the Liberal Democrats are going to form the next government, but the more Lib Dem MPs that we have in Parliament will put pressure on, let's face it, the Labour government to make this a priority, because I know Tom says it is it's very important to them, but it's not in their top 5 priorities. Let's face it, they do have a lot to sort out, but it's not in Tom's 5 priorities either. If more Lib Dems are in Parliament, it puts that pressure on, because it's clear that it really matters to us, and we are the rural champions that are going to get this sorted.
All right, thanks, Daniel. So, you've heard from all three of them now about what they would do at a national level. We've had some answers around that. You've now heard about what here on the river swale and championing your river. Would you like to come back to them on any points now? You had a question earlier. Would you still like to answer your question? Is it all right for now? Yeah. Anyone like to come back on anything we've heard so far? Yes, sir.
When I was a child, unfortunately now, the population in 2022 is 66.7 million. And of course, all the governments have this lack of networks to increase the sewer systems. So I'm trying to ask, how do we stop it when there is no possible way we can stop it? Because we overfill everything. We need to fix it. We don't need to climb and backwards or take more backwards because it's natural.
Okay, so it's a really good question, which is the investment by the water companies has not kept pace with climate change, with deforestation, and therefore runoff and development, so new houses being built, right? And the systems have not had the new capacity built to absorb increased runoff and increased input into the system. So the question, if I may frame it like this for you, is what would you do to encourage or to ensure the water companies make that capital investment that's required and isn't just coping as it is with the situation? So how would you ensure they put new money in to create new capacity on the system? We'll just run down. So Dan.
Yeah, I think for us it comes down to I think the sewage tax that I mentioned, that's 16% on water company profits every year, would raise £260 million. That's money that we could ring fence for capital investment like this. Also, it kind of makes me think about planning. And like you said, what the planning issues and kind of the growing population and the need for more homes. We do need more homes, that's true, but I do worry about Labour's aggressive house building programme. I think, again, we need homes, but are those homes going to come hand in hand with the proper infrastructure planning, the proper sort of flood defences, everything that you need, impermeable gardens and not block concrete? Because I do worry that there's just going to be these targets put in place and they're going to aggressively meet those targets and not properly think about what that's going to mean for our rivers, sewage, all that stuff.
Thanks, Daniel. Tom?
So, to go back to the original question, the money we're talking about to fix the system in pretty much any which way is a lot, right? It's not just the fact that there hasn't been new pipes and things installed, it's the fact that the ones we already have are breaking, splitting open, degrading. It's just an incredibly inefficient system that we have at the moment. I get the impulse of people like Kevin to try and go for, the whole thing is broken, it is, let's nationalise it, bring it back. I get that instinct. It won't work. And the problem is the things that we do need to do, the capital investment we need to do, will take a lot of money. And where's that coming from, given the state of the country? So, even though this is climate hustings, I'm going to talk about it anyway. You need a real foundation of green growth to build upon, so that in the future, we can't get more money out of taxing people. That's like squeezing blood out of a stone. You can't get more money by cuts. We've seen what austerity has done over the last 15 years. It's put us into this position in the first place. You can't privatise more stuff. We don't have anything left to sell. The only way of funding the kind of change that we need is by real green growth, and that, sadly, for Daniel and the Lib Dem, is the only way of doing it is by reforming planning, getting us building again. By reforming planning, it's not just about how much you build, it's the price. If you make it easier to replace some water pipes, because the planning system is removing some of that red tape, it's actually cheaper to do. So you can bring the cost down of that work, and you need the investment, the money coming into the Treasury through growth, that we can actually use to fund that infrastructure investment. And none of this is easy. Like, none of this is happening within the next 2 years. This is probably not happening in a totalistic way in the first 5. It's probably not the next Parliament. It's probably 2. And we are committed by being. You will never hear a Labour person try and promise something we can't afford to do. It is a 10-year job. We are committed to that green growth, laying that strong economic foundation, so that when money starts coming in, we can actually invest it where it's most needed. And contrary to what this idea that it isn't a priority for us, it is. The first place I would be lobbying for that money to go is to solve our water system, to fix our rivers. This is not just an environmental crisis, this is not just an ecological crisis, this is a health crisis. My background is in health. the NHS is struggling to cope. Sewage from these rivers is being directly tied to the deaths of farm animals, the deaths of people's dogs, illnesses that ever extend our A&E waiting times. This is a really holistic problem, and it has to have holistic solutions, not easy ones.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So what we hear from you is, though, it's the solution is through long-term growth, and then the money will come from Treasury, central government. Okay. Kevin, where will the investment come from into these companies to solve our sewage crisis?
Well, I think Sewage Tax, particularly both candidates touched on the national policy for a planning framework that is absolute mess at the moment, needs redoing. But if you're going to have people doing private housing, they've got to invest into the infrastructure, and that's what the real problem is in the whole country. There's no investment in infrastructure, it hasn't been for a long time. So until you get that planning, and the gentleman's absolutely right, I agree with you, it's Victorian sewage, how are we going to fix them? So there's got to be a plan in place of how you're going to do it. There's no plan at the moment, so you're going to have to plan how you do it bit by bit. But one of the things you can do is make sure them houses that are building them multi-million-pound houses in some beautiful places pay the higher taxes on when they're doing them. There's loads of profits in them houses, so all you need to do is focus on where you're going to get that money from by changing the national policy framework, and get the money from there, because they're building houses, they're just moving away. The developers make their money and then running off, and leaving them with probably more water, like say more spills. So I think that's the answer. But the thing is, you need to plan this. And you're right, Victorian, how on earth do we fix Victorian sewage systems that we've just neglected over years, and we need to get on with it. But I don't think it's really right, Tom, to say we'll do it when we can get round to it. I don't think people want to hear that. We need to get on with it now. It's a bit like phoning up the police and saying, we might have a car crash in 2 weeks' time, but I want to phone you now just in case it happens. You've got to do it now.
That's good. All right, so profit through developers would be the way that you would solve this crisis. All right. Okay. Great question. Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to come in with another question now? Yes, the lady at the back in the blue and the gentleman in the blue.
Hi. I'll shout. It's okay. You hear me?
No, I didn't want to. If you shout it as loud as you can, I'll relay it.
That's right.
Sorry, the perils of doing this outdoors.
I'll forget the message. It's going back a bit, but we're talking about, as I agree with, that people who have more should be paying more, that people who are building huge houses or have great wealth can afford to pay a little bit more. But if we can go back, where has all the money gone since the privatisation of water? Where has it gone? Has any of it gone into renewing the system, or even maintaining it so it doesn't break down completely? And if it hasn't, where has it gone?
So a brilliant question. Thank you very much. So since privatisation, about 30 years ago, £78 billion worth of money has left our privatised water companies and gone offshore in some parts and been invested in the UK in some part, but it's come out of this system. So the question is, where has that money gone, and what can we do about that when we look to the future for this system? So, Kevin, I'll start with you this time.
I would imagine it's gone on dividends to people that bought shares in the companies, and they ran away and left us with the problems, and we're stuck with them, and now we need to deal with it. Was the other part of the question, what do we do about it?
Yeah, the question was, and is there anything we can do about it? So to think about the future.
I think the answer is to nationalise the water companies, like I said, to stop them dividends out. I think people have had enough of dividends being paid out. And to be honest, some of the people investing in it have stopped investing in it as well. It's going to break because they know that the measures are coming to stop them running away with our money. And it is our money they're running away with. And it was supposed to be the amount they're supposed to be invested. They didn't do it. They borrowed money. Last time you mentioned, I can't remember who said they borrowed money. And they said, we'll invest it, but they're not really doing that. They're just misleading and just making it to one side until they get away with it. And it should be held to account, which will never make them held to account, because they just wriggle out with the best lawyers and everything. Imagine.
A question to you then, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, stakeholders. It's you're going to hear that from all three of us, I imagine. But it's not been money well spent. what little they do seems to be that over 30 years, where the water companies let something get to a crisis point and then do a half-hearted job of fixing it, and now everything's at a crisis point and they are completely stuck and they don't know what to do because they aren't getting that money back from their own stakeholders either. So what can be done? I mean, to use the it's difficult because in the PPE scandals during COVID, you can find the con artists and get that money back. Here, it's stakeholders who, as far as the law is concerned, got that money legitimately. And I'm being entirely honest here. So getting that money back from the stakeholders themselves isn't really something that there's going to be a lot of profit to do. You probably end up spending more money as a government hunting that money than the money you get back from the stakeholders. So the only thing that you can do, and it's frankly an outrage, but the only thing you can do is put new money in and into a system that is reformed so that that money doesn't go on the Swanee as well. So I've already made the green growth point, but you need to get the economy going. The government needs to step in. Make sure that infrastructure is spent well. But what's happened over the last 30 years is a complete disgrace.
So, a little bit more context to that question as well, which is currently the privatised water companies in the UK, in England, are proposing an average of about a 60% bill increase on us to pay for this. That's where it's proposed to come from. It's currently sitting with Ofwat. It's in a sort of draft form that will be determined after the election, but it's an average increase of 60% on your bills to pay for the clean up of the swell and the seas where we are, etc. Is that the right place it should be going? Is that where it should come from, Daniel, from consumers' bills, or is it from growth, or is it from renationalisation? Where do you think that new investment should come from?
Certainly not bills. I think we had a £150 increase on our bills, 23 bills, 24. I think that was outrageous, so I don't want to see any more than that. I don't know where that money's gone. I think we can try and think about, like Tom said, we put a lot of time and energy in trying to get that back, but where's that really going to get you? What we can do is look forward and ban those bonuses, I think. I don't think we need to nationalise the water company to do that. I don't think we ban them self-regulated. I think the complexities of bringing it into public ownership again, pie in the sky really, but I think, ban those bonuses. Sorry, what was the additional bit you had there?
Well, so bonuses is one thing. We were talking about the shareholder profits that come out of the industry. Yeah. So it's where does the capital investment come from? The lady's question was, if it's gone out in shareholder dividends, what can we do about that? But really, how will we replace that capital into the future?
Yeah, I think it's the fines that if we can actually properly resource the regulators to impose these fines, that money should go directly back into that investment. And the 16% surge tax.
All right, thank you. Gentleman with the iPhone, did you have a question?
Yes. I mean, in terms of what you've talked about, there hasn't been any mention of Wales. I mean, the point about Wales, I understand the water companies are public there. This is something we can learn, because there are other places in the world that have water.
Yeah, really good question. It's only in England that we have a privatised water system, a fully privatised water system. In Wales, there is a community interest company. In Scotland, it's a national company. So, candidates, is there anything we can learn from Wales or Scotland that you would like to apply here in England? Kevin, I'll come to you first this time.
Yeah, I'm sure there must be. If they can do it, why can't we? Can't we? We would be the simple answer to that. Let's look at Wales and Scotland and see what they did. Maybe we can copy some of their ideas and push it forward to make sure they come into our ownership.
But I mean, the water isn't any cleaner in Wales or Scotland, is it? I mean,
thank you. I was going to make this point, which is they have the same sort of problems as that we do here. It's just a different structure. Kevin.
I mean, yes, that's up to us as our companies to make sure who gives it. We can learn from the mistakes we've done here for our companies. So that's what we need to do. Let's learn from their mistakes and make it better. And make sure we don't make their mistakes. So we can regulate it harder for whoever's responsible, whether it be our companies.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Tom.
We'll admit right off the bat not to be an expert in the Welsh water system. And I think what we can learn is that if we had a time machine, we wouldn't have privatised the companies in the first place. You know, in the same way that Save Our Swale can learn from other successful campaigns to protect local rivers on a very local level, we should be looking wherever we possibly can to those who've done it right and taking lessons from that. I don't see any instances of nations in the British Isles in which those examples can be found, but mainland Europe's not having these problems. In the States, which isn't exactly the model that I would pick for good public organisations, but they've not had these problems early. And so, you know, I don't want to go around in circles. This is a really, really tough issue. And the problem with how we've got here is it's been a lot easier to come down the hill than to climb our way back up to where we need to be. So it's not the same solutions as just reversing what's happened over 30 years. You need to start building from scratch. And you need a solid engine behind you in order to get up that mountain.
Can you pass the mic to Danny?
Yeah, I don't really know about the Welsh and Scottish system either, but I've actually quite interested to look into both, so thank you for raising that. Yeah, I think, like you said, all around the UK we're experiencing these problems, and it goes back to what we were talking about at the start, is that a lot of the powers are already there. I mean, the things that the Liberal Democrats want to do will strengthen those, but a lot of it is already there. We just really need to properly enforce it. We shouldn't let the water companies mark their own homework. We need to do it properly, and properly put that money into a new regulator.
Thank you, Daniel. So it was a very good question. So across the UK, we are now, again, the dirty man of Europe with some of the worst quality waters across in Europe compared to other countries. And it seems to be that despite the different systems of Scotland, Wales and England, we're polluting our waters across the UK. They have different issues. In Scotland, only 4% of the CSOs, so the places where sewage is being outfalled into your rivers and into lakes and into the sea, only 4% of those are monitored. So they don't even know what's happening there. At least in England, we have 100% monitoring, so we know that there's a lot of sewage going into our waterways. Yeah, so different places, slightly different problems, but currently same end result, which is rivers and lakes and seas in terrible condition. Right. Do we have another question for the floor, or shall we come to a topic? Yes, sir.
Is possible to now the 60% of the in water, what are you going to do to make sure that that money is invested in property?
Okay, excellent question. So, if after this election, Ofwat do determine that we will have a 60% increase in our bills, and by the way, where we are in Cornwall, it's looking more like 90% increase in it. So if Ofwat determine that that's the fair and right way to raise new revenue for this investment, what will you as candidates do to ensure that that money does go into reinvestment and doesn't go offshore? Daniel, you're holding me.
I think there's a lot of pressure you can put on when you have a good, strong kind of block of people in Parliament, you know, like I'm hoping that the Liberal Democrats will. There's a lot of pressure you can put on whoever's in government to kind of make sure these things don't get lost by the wayside. There's many ways you can do it, but yeah, I think that's all I can say on that one.
Yeah, I mean, these proposed bill rises are just tinny of disgrace, aren't they? It's very much in mind of the 2008 crash, in which people were gambling with our mortgage money and then came to the governments to get bailouts when it all went wrong. The Labour has a really, really good environmental team, and they'll form, hopefully, a very, very good environmental department of ministers who will be holding them to account. I'd be highly surprised if the next government didn't immediately sat down on the proposal for that kind of bill rise. People, like, the cost of living already is crippling people. Even in rural communities like ours, the thing that struck me the most over this campaign actually is just how much rural poverty bubbles under the surface and doesn't really get the national coverage it should. All amplified by how rural it is. People who are in villages that used to be bustling in and out of holiday homes or anything like that. The idea that we should be paying for the water company's failures is absurd. And I know that with the series of incredibly strict measures to revamp the powers of the regulators, that we would be implementing very early doors in the next election, that any money, no matter its source, that comes in to water companies and the regulators is actually used more effectively. Because currently, you could shovel millions into that, and if nothing changes, then that will get squirreled away as well. So the reform has to come first.
For more efficiency.
This is exactly what I was talking about, worry. How do we know where that 60% is going if they do that? Are they just going to do the same again, bluff us off, say we're doing this, not really doing it? So there needs to be some really robust challenges to that, and we need some, if they're going to do something as raise your tax bills like, well, the water bill by 60%, you'd need to have a department or a minister for that, I would suggest, to make sure he's responsible to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. So that minister is in charge of environment needs to be really held to responsibility, because we hold the politicians to be responsible. It's them that does it, and they need to do it. So I would suggest we will make the politicians accountable to make sure that money gets invested in the right thing. And it's about responsibility and making sure it gets done. But my real concern is, yeah, they'll screw it all away again. Raise that, they'll do the same again. So that's why I don't want to do the same thing. It's like being in the war, really. First World War, let's go to the top and get killed. Oh, we'll do it again next time. You're not changing anything, you're just doing it a different way with the same result. So that's my real concern about that.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, so Tom, you mentioned rural communities. So I'm going to shift the discussion slightly here. So we've been talking about sewage, but another major input to our rivers, which is causing them to be in very poor condition, is agricultural runoff. Right. So this is a connected and related issue. And so the question which actually was pre-submitted by Juliet Young, I don't know if Juliet is here. Anyway, it's a very good question, which is how will you work with landowners and farmers to reduce runoff and eutrophication of rivers, so that agricultural input as opposed to sewage input to this system. So what will you do around that? So Kevin, perhaps we can come to you first.
Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard around here there's been some people prosecuted for the runoffs, and it was an accident one, it happened a second time, on the fine. Again, it's all about regulation, and as I mentioned, the minister, you have this minister responsible to get, and the MP, whoever's the MP out, anybody who wins up to 13 candidates, it's their job to make sure that gets done locally around here and gets brought to account and stops it. So again, it's a political decision that the MP has to hold to account, and hold your MP to account to make sure he does his job, or she, in this election, to make sure they perform and make sure they get held to account if they're doing that in this area, in the rural area. It's the MP's job to hold it to.
Yeah, this is a real hornet's nest, isn't it? Because when it is really egregious, it should absolutely go to prosecution. More often than not, though, the spills that come from farms is a side consequence of just how dire economically it is to try and be a farmer at the moment. Every penny that a farm makes goes back into the farm. Farms are closing because the kids of the farmers don't want to carry on that mantle from their parents. It's incredibly laborious, and it's like pound per hour worked is probably the least paid job in the whole country. It isn't a surprise to me that in those scenarios, especially given we've had years recently with horrendous flooding that has affected crop yields, and certainly since Brexit, when subsidies from the EU were promised to be replaced and never were, I can almost understand why things get missed on farms. I can understand why, in that high pressure environment, mistakes that happen. That is the far more common root cause of material that should not be in rivers getting into rivers from agricultural sites. The only way you can really deal with that is hand in hand with our agricultural sector. We cannot become all high and mighty and think that that will solve the problem. You need farmers to come with you, the lockstep, in the same way that you need anglers to come with you. All these different groups that have an interest in the river in some way, and they don't want to see it polluted, they don't want to see it unusable, but they are also facing their economic pressures. And so one of the sideways that you can actually help with this is by creating a new deal for farmers, really stepping out and supporting your local farms, buy local food, make sure that our agricultural sector has some long-term viability. Because currently I'm really concerned that just at the time when in the world we need a good supply of local food, that's going to start disappearing as farms close. We need to make sure that farmers are looked after, that our agricultural sector is protected, and through working with them, we will be able to reduce the waste that ends up in rivers from agricultural institutions. But to loop back to the very beginning, obviously, when there's really egregious, repeated law breaking from any business, they should be held to account legally.
Thanks to Daniel, and then Kevin will let you back to
Thank you. So yeah, that incident with the spillage that animals are killing on the school that was awful, and we shouldn't prosecute really, but it doesn't happen again. But what we heard from the Save Our Swale meeting last month was that in this part of the country, agriculture really isn't the big part of the problem, it is human waste. But we also heard quite clearly that farmers are our allies in this fight. They're the custodians of the countryside, and it's not by accident when it looks this way, they make it so. So there's a lot more we should be doing to support them. And the Lib Dems, we want to put £1 billion a year into a rural recovery package that will support farmers to do things like develop plant-based solutions for fertilisers, develop precision farming methods, which mean that they have to use less fertiliser. So they're being asked to do a lot more for the environment, but not supported with it. I was at Labour and Auction Mart just this morning, and they were telling me that they're as bothered about what's happening to our rivers as we are. I mean, 30 sheep went in the river a couple of weeks ago and nearly died, so they know what the problem is. Like I said, they've been asked to do so much more by the government to help deal with it, and they're just not being supported properly. So I think that we need to sort that out and put an extra £1 billion a year into our farming.
Thank you. And Kevin, do you want to cover?
I just wanted to make a point. The Green Party manifesto does put in, we're going to treble the subsidies for farmers to help them farm good food, get them on the right tracks. Which is actually what to do now. We weren't very big supporters of the Green Party, but they're actually trying to change the way they farm as well. There's a good point that both Tom and Daniel made there about helping farmers.
Thank you. So, we're going to start to wrap up this conversation now. It is getting chillier now. I'm going to teach her. But I just want to check first of all whether Deborah, whether Save Our Swale had any specific questions you'd like to ask, or any other member of SOS. Is there anything specific you'd like to ask the candidates?
I think we heard very clearly from Becky Morton, Clean River Oakley, that a lot of what we need to do is already there. We just need to begin to enforce that. I think I would also say that whichever party is in the next government, as well as obviously being politicians, they do need to engage with kind of groups and individuals that have done this work. A very kind of pertinent point was made earlier about pensions and what that means if we change the way that the water companies are structured. So Professor David Hall has done significant work this budget, but to kind of display or demonstrate exactly what can be done to change the structure of the water companies, not necessarily nationalising that, but looking at how, if we start to take money away from them, or if we begin to fine them, or if we find their investors, which may mean that we lose those shareholders, what the impact of that is. So a lot of this work's already been done, and those people are the experts. And I know the current government doesn't really believe in experts, but there are people who've got a lot of experience in this particular area, and I think it would be remiss not to kind of engage with those groups and those individuals.
Okay, brilliant question. So attitude to expertise, and I would include with those academic experts and industry experts, community experts as well, like Save Our Swell, who really know what's going on here. So a quick question then around your attitudes to experts, and would you invite them in to help solve these problems? So Kevin, comment with that.
I just think politics and parties need to work together. Instead of fighting each other, we need to collaborate together. And that's a really good point that you're saying. We need to be together to fight this. Everybody's sick of fighting each other. I think there's a lot of common ground here between all three candidates. And why can't we do that at big parties when we get together? Let's work together and let's stop fighting. Just people are fed up with it. Let's start listening to each other and let's stop talking. Because that's what we need to do with our community to make things better. Not one of us, I don't think, has the absolute answer, but there's some answer in there between all three of us, and that's the point I would like to get out, that working collaboratively.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this, everybody. I'm actually going to say something I said at the Osmodeling. I know that some of you are at Osmodeling, I recognise faces, but it's always worth repeating. I actually think that the job of an MP isn't to know everything. The job of an MP is to identify the experts, identify the hard workers, surround yourself with them, lift their voices up, much in the same way that MP is meant to represent and lift up the voices of their constituents, not talk over them. And the job then, the thing that a politician is there to do, is once all the information is gathered, once all the expertise is there, once people have been raised and heard on a national scale, you carve a way through, you cut through the chaff, and you actually propose and implement real, workable solutions to really complicated, difficult, long-term problems. And so, if I was elected, it would be on my list every month, just about, of coming back to the constituency, talking to the experts, the people who know, who live, breathe the river, and make sure their voices aren't just heard by me, but heard on a national scale through me as well. Politicians shouldn't have to learn everything, know everything rather. They should be open to learning, and wherever my blind spot is, Welsh water, I want to be able to be here, learn, and actually come back with something fundable, something implementable, something that will be actually effective. It's very easy to knock off cheap sound bites or read from a manifesto, but ultimately the job of the politician is to make that judgment call. And so experts should be the first and last people that politicians listen to. I'm not going to go and have a rant about Michael Gove because I might. Yeah, Save Our Swell would be, I'd have an open door in my office to Save Our Swell and communities like
that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's already been said, but none of us have a monopoly on wisdom, and you guys are there to educate us and to make sure that we're doing our job. I think it'd be a dereliction of duty if we weren't listening to you. And it's expert, it's not just formal groups, but it's like I did today, going up to farmers, talking to them directly and hearing what they need, because they taught me a lot this morning, a lot of things I learned, and now I'm sat here knowing a lot more about their priorities, just like I was after I went to Sewage meeting next month. You can't do your job if you're not there and engaged, and also not just at election time. You've got to be talking to people all year round, not just when you need grace.
All right, thank you very much. And you're going to have literally 30 seconds to answer it. But then I'm going to come to Henry. Henry is our awesome policy manager at SAS, and he's going to give a little summing up back to you. Right? So that's quite a daunting prospect, he's going to give you a little summing up back to you, and then we're going to be wrapping it up. Okay. So, My final question to you two, and it's literally just a matter of seconds. I just want to know, one thing would you do? What's the one thing you would do to make a difference for this river right here if you were elected? Okay? So, Daniel, going from you first. What's the one thing you would do?
A strengthen new regulator, properly resourced.
Okay, thank you. Strengthen your regulator. Tom?
You've asked me after an hour and a half saying things are complicated to say one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to copy. You need to give the regulator teeth.
Good, thanks. Okay.
Support all the residents and keep this going and get this into a public domain, private court to make sure nobody forgets about it and we get so many before.
Okay, alright, thank you. Alright, so now, the man with quite a hard job to do here. Okay, you're right, it's the subject what you can do.
Yes, you bring away dictionary corner. But I think what I'm trying to do is kind of group together some of the agreement we've had on the panel, some of the areas which we might have wanted to see touched on, but probably haven't been touched on too much by candidates tonight. And then finally try and give you a summary of what the panel as a whole have committed to do for you in this community. So in terms of the agreement, I think it's been pretty clear that the regulators need to that they need to be reformed in some capacity in order to actually enforce the law as it currently stands and end this profit from pollution. We've also heard that it is a complex issue. I think we all know that. And each party kind of sets out a slightly different solution to that long-term policy. But these have all got quite different timescales. So I think as you go away and think about it, it's thinking what is the timescale that works for you. What we think probably hasn't been discussed a huge amount of this evening is what the parties would do to work with nature in order to tackle the dual crisis we have around climate, biodiversity loss. And we know things like tree planting. We touched on a little bit about agriculture and sustainable farming. But perhaps if they come knocking on your door, you could ask them how they're going to work with nature to tackle sewage pollution. And we also haven't heard, well, we've heard a lot about the cost of dealing with this issue, but we haven't heard much about the cost of not dealing with it. And this is clearly a beautiful place. It's got a really strong local community that lives and breathes this river. And the people going in the water and have health issues. We talked about the agricultural impact, the people losing stock for this season, as well as tourism. We've been here for a couple of hours and we can see people in and out of the water. So it's clearly a drive for this local community. So it'd be great to have to think about the cost of not acting. And then finally, just to sum up what I think they've been promised to you here tonight. And top of that list is to be present here in your community. I can't imagine why that's a point that's come up. So to work here in this community. And they've all been very clear that they're willing to learn and to talk to the local campaign groups. Someone mentioned there's an open door. They may well regret saying that. So I encourage you to very much walk through that open door as much as possible. And they've also highlighted that as your MP, it's going to be their job to hold the polluters to account.
I'm going to give if you'd like to say some words or something, but I first of all like to say thank you to our candidates for coming out. It's not an easy job to do this, is it? And to talk about it is quite specific amongst a plethora of issues that you are dealing with, so thank you for doing that. We do really appreciate it and appreciate your time this evening. You know, it really matters to us. We've been touring the country in our bus, and everywhere we go, people are absolutely desperate to talk about this issue. We really appreciate you coming out on, I don't even know what night it is. What day are we on? Friday. On a Friday night, right? You're meant to be in the pub by law, and you're here with us, and you're talking about sewage, right? And it's 24, and you're having to do that. But we really, really appreciate it. We can feel the passion for this beautiful place, and that's why you're here, because it really, really matters. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to say we've got our sewage and sewage pollution manifesto at the front. We've got some vote creation posters and things like that. Please do take them. Use this to hold these guys to account in the future, but also to ask them further questions. The last group I want to say a massive thank you to, though, is Deborah and SOS. Like, we get paid to do this job. We are a charity who do this. But Deborah and her team are volunteers, and they work tirelessly on your behalf to make sure this river will be cleaner, and it will be better. There will be more biodiversity in it. It will be in a much better condition, and it won't pose a threat to public health into the future because of their work. So massive thank you to Deborah.
Just a big thank you to everybody, and I also want to say thank you to Surfers Against Sewage, particularly to Kirsty up there, who's really supportive of us as a campaign group and has really kind of helped signposting us in terms of where we need to go on next steps. So yeah, and we'll just continue doing what we're doing until we stop what's happening to the river. So thank you so much for turning up on Friday, really appreciate it.